on Saturday night, I went to Buffalo Wild Wings with a bunch of my friends to watch UFC 246. In fact, here's what happened. Really, first of all, I was there to see Conor McGregor fight, Cowboy. That's what I wanted to see. But I got to say, here's what was cool. My best friend Elijah is in the Air Force. He's gone. He lives in Omaha, Nebraska. I miss him a lot. But his family actually was like, hey, Zach, you want to come with us to watch the fight at Buffalo Wild Wings? And it was so cool. And I got to meet a couple fans. Some people came up to me and said, hey, are you Zach from Strong Opinion Sports? And I was like, yes, I am. And it was pretty cool and wild. And I loved it. But Elijah, first of all, you're missed. We had a great time without you, but you are so much missed. His parents were awesome. And maybe the reason I'm talking about this is because, first of all, I wanted to share my love of my friend Elijah, who's in the Air Force. But UFC 246 was weird. It was not, the Conor McGregor fight was 40 seconds. So I had to find other things like to make the experience worth it to me. Like what about it did I enjoy? And it was so odd because there were so many one-sided fights in this fight night. I mean, Pettis tapped in round 2, Osborne tapped in round 1. I was excited for the Olenek Green fight, and then, Maurice Green got pushed around and tapped in the second round. I was like, man, come on, what the heck? I wanted these two huge men to have a giant brawling duel. And then even like Holly Holm had a fight that did go down to a decision, but it was extremely not a very exciting fight. It was kind of like Holly Holm had the strategy. She wanted to control the fight for a long time and just try to get points. So finally we got to Conor McGregor versus Cowboy. And I was like, oh, let's go. And there were people at Buffalo Wild Wings that had hats on. And this is not sponsored. It's just the place I watched the fight at. But I was just hoping. I was like, please, tonight, all night has been kind of one-sided. Can we please get a really good, entertaining fight? And I got to say, Conor McGregor's fight was probably the most entertaining fight of the night. Now, and it was also probably the most entertaining 40 seconds of the entire night. But it was 40 seconds. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, all I wanted was a back and forth intense fight. And we didn't get it. Conor McGregor knocked out Cowboy in 40 seconds. He comes out, bam, bam. Like, he literally felt like he jumped on him, I think, looking back. And then he had a shoulder to the nose, Conor McGregor did. And he knocked out Cowboy in 40 seconds. Are you kidding me? Like, it was wild. And it was so much fun. The place went crazy, by the way. But I got to say, I love Conor McGregor for so many reasons. One of them is that he talks a bunch of mess, but Conor McGregor backs up the stuff he talks. I mean, he really does, and he really did. He's a great fighter. He talks a lot of smack, but he's a great fighter that can back up that smack talk. Now, I believe a lot of people who watched this fight, like my dad had never heard of Cowboy before, didn't know a lot about him, and some people thought that the reason why he goes by Cowboy, Donald was so gracious after the fight was because he thought he was always going to lose. But that's not true. I think a majority of the people just don't understand who Donald is as a fighter. He's super gracious. That's his brand. That's his shtick. I mean, he's not a guy who's loud and boisterous, and he's not a cocky loudmouth. He's a gracious, respectful man, respectful guy. That's who Cowboy is, and I respect that approach. I mean, that's really cool. And I think even Conor McGregor respected that approach. Personally, I love Conor McGregor. He seems like a cocky, arrogant SOB, but that's fun to me. I don't think he really is cocky and arrogant. I think he's just really smart as a businessman. Conor McGregor understands that, it's a war of escalation. The more wild he is at the podium, the more crazy stuff he says, the better it is for business. And so, I want to point out, though, Conor McGregor had a moment of really cool humanity where, he knocks out a Cowboy in 40 seconds. It's embarrassing. And he goes up to Donald and gave him a hug. He was incredibly respectful. He hugged Cowboy's grandma. The way that Conor treated Cowboy after beating him was so respectful. And it's the most subdued I've ever seen Conor McGregor after winning a fight. I really believe that Conor McGregor respects he respects Cowboy's gracious approach to life and the way he carries himself. And I think it was a cool moment for Conor where I was like, okay, I love to see him not rubbing this in his face. He's being human and shaking his hand and giving him a hug and respecting him. I love Conor McGregor, man. What gets me about Conor is his story. People don't understand. Conor McGregor was once a plumber. And look, I respect plumbers. It's a really respectable trade. Like it's an important part of our society. I have friends who are plumbers. Like it's a very tough job. But how many plumbers can you say how many guys who used to be plumbers can say they went from a plumber to having $100 million in the bank? Conor McGregor became a multi-millionaire from being a plumber. I mean, that story to me is so cool. I think a lot of people hate Conor McGregor. I get it. He's a loudmouth, but I don't think he's really actually a loudmouth. I think Conor McGregor is the guy who made it, a plumber who became a multimillionaire. And that's so cool to me, so exciting for me, for him. Like, it's awesome. And he's the guy who made it. And he's a smart businessman. He talks a lot of smack, but the reason why he talks so much is because it's for show. I really think most of what Conor McGregor says and a lot of his antics are not because that's really who he is. I think a lot of that is because he knows the more loud and crazy and boisterous he is, the more cameras get put on him, the bigger star he becomes. And so I don't hold Conor McGregor's mouth against him at all. In fact, I think we saw this against Donald, like against a Cowboy. I keep wanting to say Dallas. His name is Cowboy. He goes by Cowboy. But the way he carried himself after beating Donald, the way that Conor McGregor did, showed a lot of humanity and was so cool to me. So I love Conor McGregor. He's my favorite fighter in the world. And part of it's because of the entertaining way he talks. And then part of it is because he's got a great story. And even in a big moment against Cowboy and after beating Cowboy, he was incredibly gracious. So Conor is my favorite fighter. That's what I thought of UFC 246. It was a weird night, very one-sided night. But even, you can criticize the fight. It was only 40 seconds, but you have to admit it was probably the most entertaining 40 seconds of the entire night.